Okay. Hello. It's been a while now. Listen, please don't blame me for being so inconsistent, I guess, nowadays. I've just been so busy, and also, right after I did the wine stream, 2 days later, I was in bed with a fever. Like, can you fucking believe it? I've had a fever, like, for the yeah, I had a fever in December, had one in January, and then I had one now. Like this weather is so messed up. It's messing up my health so bad. I just want summer to start. Like enough is enough. I am done with winter. I don't like winter anyways. Please. Anyways, initially I wasn't trying to do this particular stream as like to come back to. I thought I'd go do something like I was initially planning to play Nameless. It's the name, right? Oh, I forgot. It was initially, but then recently I finished reading Midnight Sun, and oh my fucking god, I'm not gonna go too deep into my thoughts about that book. I'm gonna do a video about that separately. It's just it the feelings that book evokes just cannot be put into words. So I was like, okay, let's. So see, I just finished reading Midnight Sun. So what's the next best thing you can do? Revisit Twilight. So that's what we're gonna do today. Last time we did 2 chapters because Bella thinks way too much. Like Bella, shut the fuck up. So today we're gonna start with chapter 3. Hold on, let me just get things set up. Oh my god. If I sound super giddy, it's because of Midnight Sun. Okay. The music has been set. What? Why is this not working? Hold on. There we go. I think I need to reduce the sound a bit so you guys can hear me. I don't know. Let me know if it's like too much or too less. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, last time we finished at chapter 2, which was basically what happened in chapter 2? Oh yeah, chapter 1 was when he freaked out when he saw her and ran away. Like he smelled her and he was like, fuck, you stink. Chapter 2 was when he came back and was suddenly so polite. Like he's like, okay, now you're wearing deodorant, we can be friends. So yeah, chapter 3. Phenomenon. Oh, I forgot these chapters are named. It's been a while since I've read a book where the chapters were named. Okay. That's probably because I've been reading fan fiction more than books, so never mind. When I opened my eyes in the morning, something was different. It was the light. It was still the grey green light of a cloudy day in the forest, but it was clearer somehow. I realized there was no fog veiling my window. I jumped up to look outside and then groaned in horror. A fine layer of snow covered the yard, dusted the top of my truck, and whitened the road. But that wasn't the worst part. All the rain from yesterday had frozen solid, coating the needles on the trees in a fantastic, gorgeous pattern and making the driveway a deadly ice slip. I had enough trouble not falling down when the ground was dry. It might be safe for me to go back to bed now. Charlie had left for work when before I got downstairs. In a lot of ways, living with Charlie was like having my own place, and I found myself reveling in the loneless instead of being lonely. Yeah, this she thinks a lot. Let's just get to the point, Bella. God damn it! I threw down a quick bowl of cereal and some orange juice from the carton. I felt excited to go to school, and that scared me. I knew it wasn't the stimulating learning environment I was anticipating or seeing my new set of friends. If I was being honest with myself, I knew I was eager to get to school because I would see Edward Cullen. And that was very, very stupid. Indeed. He literally covered his nose the moment he saw you. Teenage girls, you need to have better standards. Like, I am sorry, you need to have better standards. I should be avoiding him entirely after my brainless and embarrassing babbling yesterday, and I was suspicious of him. Why would he lie about his eyes? I was still frightened of the hostility I sometimes felt emanating from it. And I was still tongue tied whenever I pictured his perfect face. I was well aware that my league and his league were spheres that did not touch. So I shouldn't be at all anxious to see him today. It took every ounce of my concentration to make it down the icy brick driveway alive. I almost lost my balance when I finally got to the truck, but I managed to cling to the side mirror and save myself. Clearly, today was going to be nightmarish. I have personally never lived in a place where it snowed. Like, I've seen snow like once in my life. But considering how much I hate the cold weather, I would personally, I don't care how hot the sky is, I would go back to sleep. Driving to school, I distracted myself from my fear of falling and my unwanted speculations about Edward Cullen by thinking about Mike and Eric, and the obvious difference in how teenage boys responded to me here. I was sure I looked exactly the same as I had in Phoenix. Maybe it was just the boys back home that maybe it was just that the boys back home had watched me pass slowly through all the awkward phases of adolescence and still thought of me that way. Perhaps it was because I was a novelty here, where novelties were few and far between. Possibly my crippling clumsiness was seen as enduring rather than pathetic, casting me as a damsel in distress. Whatever the reason, Mike's puppy dog behavior and Eric's apparent rivalry with him were disconcerting. I wasn't sure if I didn't prefer being ignored. My truck seemed to have no problem with the black ice that covered the roads. I drove very slowly though, not wanting to carve a path of destruction through the main street. Hmm. I've noticed something about Stephanie's writing is like Bella's thoughts don't match each other. Like there's no clear segue. One minute she's just thinking about how boys here like her, and that's so strange for her. And then suddenly she's like, ah, I can drive better. And it's like, what is the connection here? How does this relate? I don't know. Maybe that just shows how teenagers are just like jumping from one thought to the other. If that was like what the intention was, then great. But otherwise, this is just a bit weird. When I got out of my truck at school, I saw why Dad had so little trouble. Something silver caught my eye, and I walked to the back of the truck, carefully holding the side support to examine my tires. There were thin chains crisscrossed in diamond shapes around them. Charlie had gotten up who knows how early to put snow chains on my truck. My throat suddenly felt tight. I wasn't used to being taken care of, and Charlie's unspoken concern caught me by surprise. I was standing by the back corner of the truck, struggling to fight back the sudden wave of emotion the snow chains had brought on when I heard an odd sound. It was a high pitched screech, and it was fast, becoming painfully loud. I looked up, startled. I saw several things simultaneously. Nothing was moving in slow motion the way it does in movies. Instead, the adrenaline rush seemed to make my brain work much faster, and I was able to observe in every clear detail several things at once. Edward Cullen was standing forecast down from me, staring at me in horror. His face stood out from a sea of faces, all frozen in the same mask of shock. But of more immediate importance was the dark blue van that was skidding, tires locked and squealing against the brakes, spinning wildly across the ice of the parking lot. It was going to hit the back corner of my truck, and I was standing between them. I didn't even have time to close my eyes. Just before I heard the shattering crunch of the truck folding around the truck bed, something hit me, hard, but not from the direction I was expecting. My head cracked against the icy blacktop, and I felt something solid and cold pinning me to the ground. I was lying on the pavement behind the tan car I'd parked next to, but I didn't have a chance to notice anything else because the van was still coming. It had called gratingly around the end of the truck, and, still spinning and sliding, was about to collide with me again. A low oath made me aware that someone was with me, and the voice was impossible not to recognize. Two long white hands shot out protectively in front of me, and the van shuddered to a stop, a foot from my face. The large hands fitting providently into a deep dent in the side of the van's body. Then his hands moved so fast they blurred. One was suddenly gripping under the body of the van, and something was dragging me, swinging my legs around like a rag dolls, till they hit the tire of the tan car. I have, I don't know why I have such a hard time imagining this scene. Like, I can remember what happened in the movie, so it's a bit easier, but just reading it, I have such a hard time imagining it because it's just so much happening at once. Where was I? Yeah. In the abrupt bedlam, I could hear more than one person shouting my name. but more clearly than all the yelling, I could hear Edward Cullen's low, frantic voice in my ear. Bella, are you alright? Am I reading it like that? I'm fine. My voice sounded strange. I tried to sit up and realized he was holding me against the side of his body in an iron grasp. Be careful, he warned as I struggled. I think you hit your head pretty hard. I became aware of a throbbing ache centered above my left ear. Ow, I said, surprised. That's what I thought. His voice amazingly sounded like he was suppressing laughter. How in the... I trailed off, trying to clear my head, getting my bearings. How did you get over here so fast? I was standing right next to you, Bella, he said, his tone serious again. I turned to sit up, and this time he let me, releasing his hold around my waist and sliding as far from me as he could in the limited space. I looked at his concerned, innocent expression and was disorientated again by the force of his gold-colored eyes. What was I asking him? And then they found us, a crowd of people with tears streaming down their faces, shouting at each other, shouting at us. Don't move, someone instructed. Get Tyler out of the van, someone else shouted. There was a flurry of activity around us. I tried to get up, but Edward's cold hand pushed my shoulder down. Just stay put for now. But it's cold, I complained. It surprised me when he chuckled under his breath. There was an edge to the sound. You were over there, I suddenly remembered, and his chuckle stopped short. You were by your car. His expression turned hard. No, I wasn't. I saw you. All around us was chaos. I could hear the gruffer voices of adults arriving on the scene. But I obstinately... oh, words are hard, I'm sorry. Held on to our argument. I was right, and he was going to admit it. Bella, I was standing with you, and I pulled you out of the way. He unleashed the full devastating power of his eyes on me as if trying to communicate something crucial. No, I set my jaw. The coal in his eyes blazed. Please, Bella. Why? I demanded. Trust me, he pleaded, his soft voice overwhelming. I could hear the sirens now. Will you promise to explain everything to me later? Fine, he snapped, abruptly exasperated. Fine, I repeated angrily. It took 6 EMTs and 2 teachers, Mr. Warner and Coach Clapp, to shift the van far enough away from us to bring in the stretchers. Edward vehemently refused his, and I tried to do the same, but the traitor told them that I'd hit my head and probably had a concussion. I almost died of humiliation when they put a neck brace. It looked like the entire school was there, watching soberly as they loaded me into the back of the ambulance. Edward got to ride in the front. It was maddening. To make matters worse, Chief Swan arrived before they could get me safely away. Bella! He yelled in a panic when he recognized me on the stretcher. I'm completely fine, Dad, I sighed. There's nothing wrong with me. I turned to the closest EMT for a second opinion. I turned him out to consider the jumble of inexplicable images churning chaotically in my head. When they'd lifted me away from the car, I had seen the deep dent in the tan car's bumper, a very distinct dent that fit the contours of Edward's shoulder, as if he had braced himself against the car with enough force to damage the metal frame. And then there was his family looking on from the distance, with expressions that ranged from disapproval to fury and held no hint of concern for their brother's safety. Hello, it's been a very long time. How are you? I tried to think of a logical solution that could explain what I had just seen, a solution that excluded the assumption that I was insane. Naturally, the ambulance got a police escort to the county hospital. I felt ridiculous the whole time they were unloading me. What made it worse was that Edward simply glided through the hospital doors under his own power. I ground my teeth together. Personally, I'm too lazy to be curious about these things. Like, if something like this happened to me, I would not be noticing every detail. I would be like, oh my fucking god, I just fucking died. And then even if I did notice that, oh my god, this person was like super fast, I'd just be like, okay, thank you for saving my life, goodbye, sir. I guess teenagers are more curious, and I haven't been a teenager in a while, so I cannot relate, but still. I would just be like, I should have just stayed in bed. God damn it. They put me in the emergency room, a long room with a line of beds separated by pastel pattern curtains. A nurse put a pressure cuff on my arm and a thermometer under my thermometer. But why? Okay, I don't know enough medicine, but if Like, if you're almost in an accident, why are they checking for temperature? I'm not smart enough to figure this out. I'm just gonna trust Stephanie and her and her research. Since no one bothered pulling the curtain around me to give me some privacy, I decided I wasn't obligated to wear the stupid looking neck brace anymore. Sure. Oh, I love vampires. I adore vampire stories. Like, if there is a vampire story, I am there. When the nurse walked away, I quickly unfastened the Velcro and threw it under the bed. There was another flurry of hospital personnel, another stretcher brought to the bed next to me. I recognized Tyler Crowley from my government class beneath the bloodstained bandages wrapped tightly around his head. Tyler looked 100 times worse than I felt, but he was staring anxiously at me. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I'm fine, Tyler. You look awful. Are you alright? As he spoke, nurses began unwinding his soiled bandages, exposing a myriad of shallow slices all over his forehead and left cheek. He ignored me. I thought I was going to kill you. I was going too fast and I hit the ice wrong. He winced as one of the nurses started dabbing at his face. Don't worry about it. You missed me. How did you get out of the way so fast? You were there and then you were gone. Edward pulled me out of the way. He looked confused. Who? Edward Cullen? He was standing next to me? I'd always been a terrible liar. I didn't sound convincing at all. Cullen? I didn't see him. Well, it was all so fast, I guess. Is he okay? I think so. He's here somewhere, but they didn't make him use a stretcher. I knew I wasn't crazy. What had happened? There was no way to explain away what I'd seen. They wheeled me away then to x-ray my head. I told them there was nothing wrong and I was right, not even a concussion. I asked if I could leave, but the nurse said I had to talk to a doctor first, so I was trapped in the ER waiting, harassed by Tyler's constant apologies and promises to make it up to me. No matter how many times I tried to convince him I was fine, he continued to torment himself. Finally, I closed my eyes and ignored him. He kept up a remorseful mumbling. Is she sleeping? A musical voice asked. My eyes flew open. Edward was standing at the foot of my bed, smirking. I glared at him. It wasn't easy. It would have been more natural to ogle. Hi, Sue. How are you? Hey, Edward. I'm really sorry, Tyler began. Edward lifted a hand to stop him. No blood, no foul, he said, flashing his brilliant teeth. He moved to sit on the edge of Tyler's bed, facing me. He smirked again. So, what's the verdict? He asked me. There's nothing wrong with me at all, but they won't let me go, I complained. How come you aren't strapped to a gurney like the rest of us? It's all about who you know, he answered. But don't worry, I came to spring you. Then a doctor walked around the corner and my mouth fell open. He was young, he was blonde, and he was handsomer than any movie star I'd ever seen. He was pale, though, and tired-looking with circles under his eyes. From Charlie's description, this had to be Edward's father. See, the funny thing about this is I'm just remembering Carlisle from the movies, and the actor who played Carlisle is good-looking, but his foundation didn't match, and that's the only thing. The foundation that they used for his face was like super white. They didn't blend it all the way down to his neck. So his neck was kind of tan and his face was super white. And I just, the whole time, my attention was on his neck and like, his chin and his neck. And I was just like, blend the foundation down to his neck, god damn it. And that's all I can think of when I think of Carlisle. What chapter are you on? I am on chapter 3, page 64. Right, where was I? Right. So, Miss Swan, Dr. Cullen said in a remarkably appealing voice, how are you feeling? I'm fine, I said for the first time, I hoped. For the last time, I hoped. He walked to the light board on the wall over my head and turned it on. Your x-rays look good, he said. Does your head hurt? Edward said you hit it pretty hard. It's fine, I repeated with a sigh, throwing a quick scowl towards Edward. The doctor's cool fingers probed lightly against my skull. He noticed when I winced. Tender? He asked. Not really, I said. I'd had worse. How? What the hell were you doing in Phoenix that you've had worse? You can't be... Actually, you know what? Considering these books, she probably is that clumsy. I heard a chuckle and looked over to see Edward's patronizing smile. My eyes narrowed. Well, your father's in the waiting room. You can go home with him now. But you come back if you feel dizzy or have trouble with your eyesight at all. Can't I go back to school? I asked, imagining Charlie trying to be attentive. So you almost get into a car accident and you want to go back to school. Yeah, okay. There's a reason why I can't relate to this woman. I just cannot. I just be like, can I get then the rest of the week off? Maybe you should take it easy today. I glanced at Edward. Does he get to go to school? Someone has to spread the good news that we survived, Edward said smugly. Actually, most of the school seems to be in the waiting room. Oh no, I moaned, covering my face with my hands. Dr. Cullen raised his brows. Do you want to stay? No, no, I insisted, throwing my legs over the side of the bed and hopping down quickly, too quickly. I staggered and Dr. Cullen caught me. He looked concerned. I'm fine, I assured him again. No need to tell him my balance problems had nothing to do with hitting my head. Take some Tylenol for the pain, he suggested as he studied me. It doesn't hurt that bad, I insisted. It sounds like you were extremely lucky, Dr. Cullen said, smiling as he signed my chart with a flourish. Lucky Edward happened to be standing next to me, I amended with a hard glance at the subject of my statement. Oh, well, yes. Dr. Cullen agreed, suddenly occupied with the papers in front of him. Then he looked away at Tyler and walked to the next bed. My intuition flickered. The doctor was in on it. I'm afraid that you'll have to stay with us just a little bit longer, he said to Tyler, and began checking his cuts. And as soon as the doctor's back was turned, I moved to Edward's side. Can I talk to you for a minute? I hissed under my breath. He took a step back from me, his jaw suddenly clenched. Your father is waiting for you, he said through his teeth. He glanced at Dr. Cullen and Tyler. I'd like to speak with you alone if you don't mind. Hello, hello, welcome. I pressed. He glared and then turned his back and strode down the long room. I nearly had to run to keep up. As soon as we turned the corner into a short hallway, he spun around to face me. What do you want? He asked, sounding annoyed. His eyes were cold. His unfriendliness intimidated me. My words came out with less severity than I'd intended. You owe me an explanation, I reminded him. I saved your life. I don't owe you anything. I flinched back from the resentment in his voice. You promised. Bella, you hit your head. You don't know what you're talking about. His tone was cutting. My temper flared now. I glared defiantly at him. There's nothing wrong with my head. He glared back. What do you want from me, Bella? I want to know the truth, I said. I want to know why I'm lying for you. What do you think happened? He snapped. It came out in a rush. All I know is that you weren't anywhere near me. Tyler didn't see you either, so don't tell me I hit my head too hard. The van was going to crush us both, and it didn't. And your hands left a dent in the side of it. And you left a dent in the other car, and you're not hurt at all. And the van should have smashed my legs, but you were holding it up. I could hear how crazy it sounded, and I couldn't continue. I was so mad I could feel the tears coming. I tried to force them back by grinding my teeth together. He stared at me incredulously, but his face was tense, defensive. You think I lifted a van off you? His tone questioned my sanity, but it only made me more suspicious. It was like a perfectly delivered line by a skilled actor. Okay, I'm gonna keep my thoughts for later. I merely nodded once, jaw tight. Nobody will believe that, you know. His voice held an edge of derision now. I'm not going to tell anybody, I said each word slowly, carefully controlling my anger. Surprise flitted across his face. Then why does it matter? It matters to me, I insisted. I don't like to lie, so that'd be a good reason why I'm doing it. Can't you just thank me and get over it? Thank you. I waited, fuming and expectant. You're not going to let this go, are you? No. In that case, I hope you enjoy disappointment. We scowled at each other in silence. I was the first to speak, trying to keep myself focused. I was in danger of being distracted by his livid, glorious face. It was like trying to stare down a destroying angel. Why did you even bother? I asked frigidly. He paused, and for a brief moment his stunning face was unexpectedly vulnerable. I don't know, he whispered. Okay, I have to stop you. There are so many times I would step and he would just cut the crap and get to the point. But then there are lines like this that make me go like, please write more. We need more of this. Like seriously, I was in danger of being distracted by his livid, glorious face. Down a destroying angel. Have you ever met a person and like so you looked at them and you saw their face and you were like, oh my god, you look like a destroying angel. What the hell is a destroying angel? It's just amazing, like the imagination here. And it doesn't just end there. She's like, Bella's like, damn, I hate him, but he's good looking. And she says something to him, and then she's like, I'm so pissed off at him, but he's so good looking. He hurt my feelings, but he's so good looking. I love him, he's so good looking. And it's just like, okay, Bella, we get it, he's good looking, chill. Livid, glorious face, staring down at a destroying angel. Brief moment, his stunning face was unexpectedly wonderful. Oh my god, Stephanie, I love you. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. Then he turned his back on me and walked away. I was so angry, it took me a few minutes until I could move. When I could walk, I made my way slowly to the exit at the end of the hallway. The waiting room was more pleasant than I'd feared. It seemed like every face I knew in folks was there, staring at me. Charlie rushed to my side to put up my hands. There's nothing wrong with me, I assured him sullenly. I was still aggravated, not in the mood for chit-chat. What did the doctor say? Dr. Cullen saw me, and he said I was fine and I could go home, I sighed. Mike and Jessica and Eric were all there, beginning to converge on us. Let's go, I urged. Charlie put one arm behind my back, not quite touching me, and led me to the glass doors of the exit. I waved sheepishly at my friends, hoping to convey that they didn't need to worry about me anymore. It was a huge relief, the first time I'd ever felt that way, to get into the cruiser. We drove in silence. I was so wrapped up in my thoughts that I barely knew Charlie was there. I was positive that Edward's defensive behavior in the hall was a confirmation of the bizarre things I could hardly believe I'd witnessed. When we got to the house, Charlie finally spoke. You need to call Renee. He hung his head guiltily. I was appalled. You told Mom? Sorry. I slammed the cruiser's door a little harder than necessary on my way out. My mom was in hysterics, of course. I had to tell her I felt fine at least 30 times before she would calm down. She begged me to come home. Forgetting the fact that home was empty at the moment, but her pleas were easier to resist than I would have thought. I was consumed by the mystery Edward presented. Edward and his livid, gorgeous face. That's not a line in the book. I can't help it. I'm sorry. And more than a little obsessed by Edward himself. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I wasn't as eager to escape folks as I should be, as any normal, sane person would be. Decided I might as well go to bed early that night. Charlie continued to watch me anxiously, and it was getting on my nerves. I stopped on my way to grab 3 Tylenol from the bathroom. They did help, and the pain eased. I drifted to sleep. That was the first night I dreamt of Edward Cullen. And we have finished chapter 3 with this. Oh, Bella. Sometimes, honestly, I can't help but feel that Bella is just like really, really infatuated with Edward. Like, literally every line, like, anytime she's thinking of him, she has to mention the fact that he's really good looking. And I'm like, girl, chill, we get it. Calm down. I guess that's how love starts. Okay, moving on. Chapter 4. Invitations. Sorry, I don't want to be laughing. I can't help myself. I have the worst sense of humor and it entertains me at least. In my dream, it was very dark, and what dim light there was seemed to be radiating from Edward's skin. I couldn't see his face, just his back as he walked away from me, leaving me in the blackness. No matter how fast I ran, I couldn't catch up to him. No matter how loud I called, he never turned. Troubled, I woke in the middle of the night and couldn't sleep again for what seemed like a very long time. After that, he was in my dreams nearly every night, and always on the periphery, never within reach. The month that followed the accident was uneasy and tense, and at first embarrassing. To my dismay, I found myself the center of attention for the rest of the week. Tyler Crowley was impossible, following me around, obsessed with making amends to me somehow. I tried to convince him that what I wanted more than anything else was for him to forget all about it, especially since nothing had actually happened to me, but he remained insistent. He would follow me between classes and sat at our now crowded lunch table. Mike and Eric were even less friendly towards him than they were to each other, which made me worry that I'd gained another unwelcomed fan. No one seemed concerned about Edward, though. I explained over and over that he was the hero, how he had pulled me out of the way and I had nearly been crushed too. I tried to be convincing. Jessica, Mike, Eric, and everyone else was always commented that they hadn't even seen him there till the van was pulled away. I wondered to myself why no one else had seen him standing so far away, before he was suddenly impossibly saving my life. Probably because they're not all obsessed with Edward Cullen and his livid, glorious face. I have to stop. Oh. With chagrin, realized probable cause. No one else was as aware of Edward as I always was. No one else watched him the way I did. How pitiful. Edward was never surrounded by crowds of curious bystanders, eager for his first-hand account. People avoided him as usual. The Cullens and the Hales sat at the same table as always, not eating, talking only among themselves. None of them, especially Edward, glanced my way anymore. When he sat next to me in class, as far from me as the table would allow, he seemed totally unaware of my presence. Only now and then, when his fist would suddenly ball up, skin stretched even wider over the bones, did I wonder if he wasn't quite as oblivious as he appeared. He wished he hadn't pulled me from the path of Tyler's van. There was no other conclusion I could come to. I wanted very much to talk to him. The day after the accident, I tried. Last time I'd seen him outside the ER, we'd both been so furious. I still was angry that he wouldn't trust me with the truth, even though I was keeping my part of the bargain flawlessly. But he had in fact saved my life, no matter how he'd done it, and overnight the heat of my anger faded into odd gratitude. He was already seated when I got to biology, looking straight ahead. I sat down, expecting him to turn towards me. He showed no sign that he realized I was there. "Hello, Edward," I said pleasantly to show him I was going to behave myself. He turned his head a fraction toward me without meeting my gaze, nodded once, and then looked the other way. And that was the last contact I'd had with him. For he was there, a foot away from me, every day. I watched him sometimes, unable to stop myself, from a distance though, in the cafeteria or parking lot. I watched as his golden eyes grew perceptibly darker by day. In class, I gave no more notice that he existed than he showed towards me. I was miserable, and the dreams continued. Despite my outright lies, the tenor of my emails alerted Renee to my depression, and she called a few times, worried. I tried to convince her that it was just the weather that had me down. Mike at least was pleased by the obvious coolness between me and my lab partner. I could see he'd been worried that Edward's daring rescue might have impressed me, and he was relieved that it seemed to have the opposite effect. He grew more confident, sitting on the edge of my table to talk before biology class started, ignoring Edward as completely as he ignored us. The snow washed away for good after that one dangerously icy day. Mike was disappointed he'd never gotten to stage his snowball fight, but pleased that the beach trip would soon be possible. The rain continued heavily, though, and the weeks passed. Okay, that was okay. I think we could have more mentions of Edward and his livid, glorious face. Sorry, my bad. Jessica made me aware of another event looming on the horizon. She called the first Tuesday of March to ask my permission to invite Mike to the Girls' Choice Spring Dance in 2 weeks. "Are you sure you don't mind? You weren't planning to ask him?" She persisted when I told her I didn't mind in the least. "No, Jess, I'm not going," I assured her. Dancing was glaringly outside my range of abilities. "It'll be really fun." Her attempt to convince me was half-hearted. I suspected that Jessica enjoyed my inexplicable popularity more than my actual company. "You have fun with Mike," I encouraged. The next day, I was surprised that Jessica wasn't the usual gushing self-intrigue in Spanish. She was silent as she walked by my side between classes, and I was afraid to ask her why. If Mike had turned her down, and I was the last person she would want to tell. My fears were strengthened during lunch when Jessica sat as far from Mike as possible, chatting animatedly with Adam. Mike was unusually quiet. Mike was still quiet as he walked me to class, the uncomfortable look on his face a bad sign. But he didn't broach the subject until I was in my seat and he was perched on my desk. As always, I was electrically aware of Edward sitting close enough to touch, as distant as if he were merely an invention of my imagination. So, Mike said as he looked at the floor, Jessica asked me to the spring dance. That's great. Voiced my bright and I made my voice bright and enthusiastic. You'll have a lot of fun with Jessica. Well, he floundered as he examined my smile, clearly not happy with my response. I told her I had to think about it. Why would you do that? I let disapproval color my tone, though I was relieved he didn't give her an absolute no. His face was bright red as he looked down. Pity shook my resolve. I was wondering if you might be planning to ask me. I paused for a moment, hating the wave of guilt that swept over me, but I saw from the corner of my eye Edward's head tilt reflexively in my direction. Mike, I think you should tell her yes, I said. Did you already ask someone? Did Edward notice how Mike's eyes flickered in his direction? No, I assured him. I'm not going to be at the dance at all. Why not? Mike demanded. I didn't want to get into the safety hazards that the dancing presented, so I quickly made new plans. I'm going to Seattle that Saturday, I explained. I need to get out of town anyway. It was suddenly the perfect time to go. Can you go home? Can you go some other weekend? Sorry, no, I said. So you shouldn't make Jess wait any longer. It's rude. Yeah, you're right, he mumbled and turned dejected to walk back to his seat. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to push the guilt and sympathy out of my head. Mr. Banner began talking. I sighed and opened my eyes, and Edward was staring at me curiously. That same familiar edge of frustration, even more distinct now in his black eyes. I stared back, surprised, expecting him to look away quickly, but instead he continued to gaze with probing intensity into my eyes. There was no question of me looking away. My hands started to shake. Hello, hello. Welcome. My God. Mr. Cullen, the teacher called, seeking the answer to a question that I hadn't heard. The Krebs cycle, Edward answered, seeming reluctant as he turned to look at Mr. Banner. I looked down at my book as soon as his face released me, trying to find my place. Cowardly as ever, I shifted my hair over my right shoulder to hide my face. I couldn't believe the rush of emotions pulsing through me just because he'd happened to look at me for the first time in half a dozen weeks. I couldn't allow him to have this level of influence over me. It was pathetic. More than pathetic, it was unhealthy. I tried very hard not to be aware of him for the rest of the hour, and since that was impossible, at least not to let him know that I was aware of him. When the bell rang, at last, I turned my back to him to gather my things, expecting him to leave immediately as usual. Ah, teenagers. Oh my God. Bella, his voice shouldn't have been so familiar to me, as if I'd just known the sound of it all my life rather than just for a few short weeks. So dramatic! All your life? Are you sure about that? I turned slowly, unwillingly. I didn't want to feel what I knew I would feel when I looked at his too perfect face. Weird. My expression was wary when I finally turned to him. His expression was unreadable. He didn't say anything. What? Are you speaking to me again? I finally asked, an unintentional note of petulance in my voice. His lips twitched, fighting a smile. No, not really, he admitted. I closed my eyes and inhaled slowly through my nose, aware that I was gritting my teeth. He waited. And what do you want, Edward? I asked, keeping my eyes closed. It was easier to talk to him coherently that way. I'm sorry, he sounded sincere. I'm being very rude, I know, but it's better this way, really. I opened my eyes. His face was serious. I don't know what you mean, I said, my voice guarded. It's better if we're not friends, he explained. Trust me. My eyes narrowed. I'd heard that before. It's too bad that you didn't figure that out earlier, I hissed through my teeth. You could have saved yourself all this regret. Regret? The word, and my tone, obviously caught him off guard. Regret for what? For not letting that stupid van squish me. He was astonished. He stared at me in disbelief. When he finally spoke, he almost sounded mad. You think I regret saving your life? I know you do, I snapped. You don't know anything. He was definitely mad. I turned my head sharply away from him, clenching my jaw against all the wild accusations I wanted to hurl at him. I gathered my books together, then stood and walked to the door. I meant to sweep dramatically out of the room, but of course I caught the toe of my boot on the door jamb and dropped my books. I stood there for a moment, thinking about leaving. Then I sighed and bent to pick them up. He was there. He'd already stacked them into a pile. He hadn't. Hold on. I need to drink some water. My voice is just. Oh. Okay. Think we can continue feeling second-hand embarrassment as Bella fails to be dramatic. Then I sighed and bent to pick them up. He was there. He'd already stacked them into a pile. He handed them to me, face hard. Thank you, I said icily. His eyes narrowed. You're welcome, he retorted. I straightened up swiftly, turned away from him again, and stalked off to the gym without looking back. Gym was brutal. We'd moved on to basketball. My team never passed the ball, so that was good. But I fell down a lot. Sometimes I took people with me. Today was worse than usual because my head was so filled with Edward. I tried to concentrate on my feet, but he kept creeping back into my thoughts just when I really needed my balance. It was a relief as always to leave. I almost ran to the truck. There were just so many people I wanted to avoid. The truck had suffered only minimal damage in the accident. I had to replace the tail lights, and if I'd had a real paint job, I would have touched that up. Tyler's parents had to sell their own van for parts. I almost had a stroke when I rounded the corner and saw a tall, dark figure leaning against the side of my truck. Then I realized it was just Eric. I started walking again. Hey Eric, I called. Hi Bella. What's up? I said as I was unlocking the door. I wasn't paying attention to the uncomfortable edge in his voice, so his next words took me by surprise. I was just wondering if you would go to the spring dance with me. His voice broke on the last word. I thought it was girl's choice, I said. He was startled to be diplomatic. Well, yeah, he admitted, shamefaced. I recovered my composure and tried to make my smile warm. Thank you for asking me, but I'm going to be in Seattle on that day. Oh, he said. Maybe next time? Sure, I agreed and then bit my lip. I wouldn't want him to take that too literally. He slouched off, back towards the school. I heard a low chuckle. Edward was walking past the front of my truck, looking straight forward, his lips pressed together. I yanked the door open and jumped inside, slamming it loudly behind me. I revved the engine deafeningly and reversed out into the aisle. Edward was in his car already, 2 spaces down, sliding out smoothly in front of me, cutting me off. He stopped there to wait for his family. I could see the 4 of them walking this way, but still by the cafeteria. I considered taking out the rear of his shiny Volvo, but there were too many witnesses. I looked in the rear view mirror. A line was beginning to form directly behind me. Tyler Crawley was in his recently acquired used Sentra, waving. I was too aggravated to acknowledge him. While I was sitting there looking everywhere but at the car in front of me, I heard a knock on my passenger side window. I looked over. It was Tyler. I glanced back in my rearview mirror, confused. His car was still running, the door left open. I leaned across the cab to crank the window down. It was stiff. I got it halfway down, then gave up. I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm stuck behind Cullen. I was annoyed. Obviously, the holdup wasn't my fault. Oh, I know. I just want to ask you something while we're trapped here, he grinned. This could not be happening. Oh, it's happening, sweetie. It's happening. Will you ask me to the spring dance? He continued. I'm not going to be in town, Tyler. My voice sounded a little sharp. I had to remember it wasn't his fault that Mike and Eric had already used up my quota of patience for the day. Yeah, Mike said that, he admitted. Then why? He shrugged. I was hoping we were just letting him down easy. Okay, it was completely his fault. I'm sorry. Oh my god. She has so much more personality in the books than she does in the movie, which is kind of sad in a way. Sorry, Tyler, I said, working to hide my irritation. I really am going out of town. That's cool. We still have prom. Oh my god, oh god. I would be cussing this man out. I would just say, man, fuck you. Stay away from me. Enough is enough. Bella, you are more patient than I will ever be. And before I could respond, he was walking back to his car. I could feel the shock on my face. I looked forward to see Alice, Rosalie, Emmett, Jasper all sliding into the Volvo. In his rearview mirror, Edward's eyes were on me. He was unquestionably shaking with laughter, as if he'd heard every word Tyler had said. My foot itched towards the gas pedal. One little bump wouldn't hurt any of them, just that glossy silver paint job. I revved the engine, but they were all in and Edward was speeding away. I drove home slowly, carefully, muttering to myself the whole way. When I got home, I decided to make chicken enchiladas for dinner. It was a long process and it would keep me busy. While I was simmering the onions and chilies, the phone rang. I was almost afraid to answer it, but it might be Charlie or my mom. It was Jessica, and she was jubilant. Mike had caught her after school to accept her invitation. I celebrated with her briefly while I stirred. She had to go. She wanted to call Angela and Lauren to tell them. I suggested with casual innocence that maybe Angela, the shy girl who had biology with me, could ask Eric. And Lauren, a standoffish girl who had always ignored me at the lunch table, could ask Tyler. I heard he was still available. Just thought that was a great idea. Now that she was sure of Mike, she actually sounded sincere when she said she wished I would go to the dance. I gave her my Seattle excuse. After I hung up, I tried to concentrate on dinner, dicing the chicken especially. I didn't want to take another trip to the emergency room, but my head was spinning, trying to analyze every word Edward had spoken today. What did he mean? It was better if we weren't friends. My stomach twisted as I realized what he must have meant. He must see how absorbed I was by him. He must not want to lead me on, so we wouldn't even be friends, because he wasn't interested in me at all. Of course, he wasn't interested in me, I thought angrily, my eyes stinging, a delayed reaction to the onions. I wasn't interesting, and he was interesting and brilliant and mysterious and perfect and beautiful. Oh boy, this is giving me war flashbacks to being a teenager myself, and I do not enjoy that in the slightest. Teenage years are the worst. I want to forget. Please stop. And possibly able to lift full-sized vans with one. Okay, this I cannot relate to. I don't think I've ever met a guy who could do that. Well, that was fine. I could leave him alone. I would leave him alone. I would get through my self-imposed sentence here in Purgatory, and then hopefully some school in Southwest or possibly Hawaii would offer me a scholarship. I focused my thoughts on sunny beaches and palm trees as I finished the enchiladas and put them in the oven. Charlie seemed suspicious when he came home and smelled the green peppers. I couldn't blame him. The closest edible Mexican food was probably in Southern California. But he was a cop, even if just a small town cop, so he was brave enough to take the first bite. He seemed to like it. It was fun to watch as he slowly began trusting me in the kitchen. Dad, I asked when he was almost done. Yeah, Bella. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to Seattle for a week from Saturday, if that's okay. I didn't want to ask for permission. It set a bad precedent, but I felt rude, so I tacked it at the end. Man, I can't relate to that at all. I have to prepare a presentation and ask when I wanted to go out when I was a kid, I had to ask my parents like 5 business days in advance, make a presentation and tell them all the reasons why I should be allowed to go outside and hang out with my friends. And she's just like, yeah, I don't want to ask for his permission. I'm just gonna go, don't want to set a bad precedent. What the hell does that even mean? He's your parent. Of course you have to ask his permission, right? Man. Well, I don't know, she has it so easy. I remember one time I wanted to go over to my friend's house for a sleepover. So I actually had to ask my mom a month in advance, because it was like I would ask my mom first and she would obviously say no, being the Asian mom that she is. Then I would ask my dad and he would say, what did your mom say? And I was just like, oh no, she asked, she told me to, ask you, which he wouldn't believe because he knew I was lying. And I just like go back and forth between the two until I got permission. And here she's like, I don't want to ask for permission. It's at a bad precedent. Excuse me? Oh, this is pissing me off more than it should. I'm sorry. Okay. Where was I? Why? He sounded surprised, as if he were unable to imagine something that folks couldn't offer. Well, I want to get a few books. The library here is pretty limited, and maybe look at some clothes. I had more money than I was used to having since, thanks to Charlie, I hadn't had to pay for a car. Not that the truck didn't cost me quite a bit in the gas department. That truck probably doesn't get very good gas mileage, he said, echoing my thoughts. I know, I'll stop in Montesano and Olympia and Tacoma if I have to. Are you going all by yourself? He asked, and I couldn't tell if he was suspicious. I had a secret boyfriend or just worried about the car trouble. Yes. Seattle is a big city. You could get lost, he fretted. Dad, Phoenix is 5 times the size of Seattle, and I can read a map. Don't worry about it. Do you want me to come with you? Tried to be crafty as I hid my horror. That's all right, Dad. I'll probably just be in dressing rooms all day. Very boring. Oh, okay. Thought of him thought of sitting in women's clothing stores for any period of time immediately put him off. Thanks, I smiled at him. Will you be back in time for the dance? Grr. That's literally what's written here. Only in a town this small would a father know when the high school dances were. No, I don't dance, Dad. He of all people should understand that. I didn't get my balance problem from my mother. He did understand. Oh, that's right, he realized. The next morning, when I pulled into the parking lot, I deliberately parked as far as possible from the silver Volvo. I didn't want to put myself in the path of too much temptation and end up owing him a new car. Getting out of the cab, I fumbled with my key and it fell into a puddle at my feet. As I bent to get it, a white hand flashed and grabbed it before I could. I jerked upright. Edward Cullen was right next to me, leaning casually against my trunk. How do you do that? I asked in amazed irritation. Do what? He asked. He held my key out as he spoke. I reached for it and he dropped it into my palm. Pure out of thin air. Bella, it's not my fault if you're exceptionally unobservant. His voice was quiet as usual, velvet and muted. I scowled at his perfect face. His eyes were light again, a deep golden honey color. Then I had to look down to reassemble my now tangled thoughts. Why the traffic jam last night? I demanded, still looking away. I thought he was supposed to be pretending I don't exist, not irritating me to death. That was for Tyler's sake, not mine. I had to give him his chance, he snickered. You? I gasped. Couldn't think of a bad enough word. It felt like the heat of my anger should physically burn him, but he only seemed more amused. And I'm not pretending you don't exist, he continued. So are you trying to irritate me to death? Since Tyler's van didn't do the job? Anger flashed in his tawny eyes. His lips pressed into a hard line, all signs of humor gone. Bella, you are utterly absurd, he said, his voice low. My palms tingled. I wanted so badly to hit something. I was surprised at myself. I was usually a non-violent person. I turned my back and started to walk away. Wait, he called. I kept walking, sloshing angrily through the rain, but he was next to me, easily keeping pace. I'm sorry, that was rude, he said as he walked. I continued to ignore him. I'm not saying it wasn't true, he continued, but it was rude to say it anyway. Why don't you leave me alone? I grumbled. I want to ask you something, but you sidetracked me, he chuckled. He seemed to have recovered his good humor. Do you have multiple personality disorder? I asked severely. You're doing it again. I sighed. Fine then. What do you want to ask? I was wondering if a week from today, the day of the spring dance. Are you trying to be funny? I interrupted him, wheeling toward him. My face got drenched as I looked up at his expression. His eyes were wickedly amused. Will you please allow me to finish? I bit my lip and clasped my hands together, interlocking my fingers so I couldn't do anything harsh. I heard you say you were going to Seattle that day, and I was wondering if you wanted to ride. That was unexpected. What? I wasn't sure what he was getting at. Do you want to ride to Seattle? With who? I asked, mystified. Myself, obviously. He enunciated every syllable as if we were talking to someone mentally handicapped. I was still stunned. Why? Well, I was planning to go to Seattle in the next few weeks, and to be honest, I'm not sure if your truck can make it. My truck works just fine, thank you very, very much for your concern. I started to walk again, but I was too surprised to maintain the same level of anger. But can your truck make it there on 1 tank of gas? He matched my pace again. I don't see how that is any of your business, stupid shiny Volvo owner. The wasting of finite resources is everyone's business. Honestly, Edward, I felt a thrill go through me as I said his name, and I hated it. I can't keep up with you. I thought you didn't want to be my friend. I said it would be better if we weren't friends, not that I didn't want to be. Oh, thanks. Now that's all cleared up. Heavy sarcasm, I realized I had stopped walking again. We were under the shelter of the cafeteria roof now, so I could more easily look up at his face. It certainly didn't help my clarity of thought. It would be more prudent for you to not be my friend, he explained, but I'm tired of staying away from you, Bella. His eyes were gloriously intense as he uttered that last sentence, his voice smoldering. How can someone's eyes be gloriously intense? Girl, you are so whipped. Will you go to Seattle with me? He asked, still intense. Couldn't speak yet, so I just nodded. He smiled briefly, and then his face became serious. You should stay away from me, he warned. I'll see you in class. He turned abruptly and walked away the way we'd come. Yeah, that's great advice. Like, ask her, like, first go, like, yeah, first go, like, hey, you want to go to Seattle with me? And then be like, you should stay away from me. Like, make up your mind, my guy, please. I think I'm gonna stop here. We did 2 chapters. I know it's not a lot, but I have to go to sleep soon because I just finished 9 hours of work, which was not fun. Work is never fun, but it's fine. It's something I have to do. Hold on, give me a moment. Okay, there we go. I don't I don't have words to explain what I just read. Oh, Bella, you are special. That's like the only way I can explain it. You are special. I don't mean to be offensive, of course, that I feel like the book certainly does capture how teenagers think. Not just teenagers, like, it's your first crush ever. So the person you're crushing on is like the most beautiful person you've ever seen. But the way Stephanie describes Edward. Oh my god. I have a digital copy of this book. Otherwise, I would just be like bookmarking this, like, okay, I'm gonna come back and read this again because it is so funny. Oh my god. Right. And it's like, as someone who just recently finished reading Midnight Sun, the contrast between Bella's thoughts versus Edward's thoughts, and it's just like, wow. Because Bella at any given time is thinking about Edward and her feelings towards Edward and how good looking Edward is, and if whether Edward is bothered by what she's doing. Edward on the other hand is like, man, I can't stop thinking about how I want to kill this chick. It's so funny. That's why I keep laughing, because I just remember the passages in Midnight Sun where he's just like just making these really drawn out plans about how he can kill Bella. Like, he's like, okay, if I want to kill her, then these are the number of witnesses in the room, so I'll have to take care of those people first and kill them first. I'll do this in order to get through them really quickly. It'll take me so many seconds. There might be a little bloodshed and a little screaming, but that's fine. As long as I can just get to Bella. Like, literally, that's like this. At any given time. Especially in the earlier chapters, he's just like, there's so many ways I can kill her. And Bella is just like, he doesn't love me. The contrast is it's amazing. It's beautifully done. Stephanie, you are amazing. I just don't know what else to say. Oh my god. I'm most definitely gonna do like a more detailed review of Midnight Sun and my thoughts about it, because I have so many thoughts. This book is just incredible. I wish there was more. But I'm not gonna give everything away now. Yeah, so we are back on this particular streaming cycle for now, because I just can't wake up early enough to stream in the evening, like before work, so it's after work, I think is better. Tomorrow, let's do Nameless, because it's been a while, and I miss Tay, and if I want to get to Tay, I have to get through Yano first. So. It's it's gonna be torture, but we'll get through it together. That's what's keeping me going. Oh my god. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna wrap things up here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will see you next time. Maybe we'll make this reading stream a weekly thing. I don't know, let's see. Anyways, bye bye.